Hi everybody, it's Duncan here again from McRae's Window Cleaning. We're continuing our series on how to start a window cleaning business right here in Australia. And today what we're going to discuss is quoting on new jobs, whether it's someone's contacted you and asked you to quote on their premises, or whether you're doing a cold calling run through a particular area, whether you're quoting on a job lead that you've received from places like OneFlare or HighPages, those job lead platforms that we talked about in a previous video. So the principles of today will also help you with quoting residentially. But today we're going to focus on commercial quoting. So let's get into our discussion. I talked to a friend of mine the other day, Jeremy, who runs a window cleaning business in the Hunter Valley, and he said he operates quoting on a very simple principle, and I know a friend locally who does the same. He has a rate per panel of glass that he operates on. He calculates the number of panels, and then there's the price. For him and the work he's pursuing, that works fine. That works really well. But the reality is no commercial job is the same as the past one, as we just mentioned. So we need to understand some greater principles that will help you to quote successfully on some of the large commercial things. Because what are we talking about? Not just a cafe, a boutique on the street front near your place or in a shopping centre. We're talking also office blocks. We're talking about single, double-storey office blocks. We're talking about quite large premises from time to time, and so you need to have some principles in mind that will help you with your quoting. So to help you with that, we want to discuss, and this will help you with your residential quoting, these principles of understanding. The key thing is understanding the costs, the operating costs of your business. So you need to develop a clear understanding of that. And why is that important? Well, this all factors in on what you're pricing these jobs at. See, many people have the concept that all a window cleaner has is operating costs, is overheads, is a bucket and a couple of squeegees, wash the windows clean. How simple is that? But it's not the case. A successful business has so many other layers to the operating costs. So let's talk about those. What are these costs? Well, firstly, there's your time. You've got to think about your public liability insurance costs. If you're going to employ somebody, you've got the costs of their wages, their superannuation. Work cover will require you to pay a fee to cover their work cover costs. You need to think about your vehicle costs, which is your travel to and from the job. There's general depreciation of that. You've got all of the equipment. Each time you use your equipment, it will depreciate. You've got the materials involved with detergents, squeegees, detailing cloths. If you're using water-fed pole for some of these commercial jobs, you have to think about your filters and the resin in your system. What marketing costs were involved with getting contact with these people? Did you have to pay for a lead cost through some of the platforms like HighPages, OneFlare, Service Seeking that we've talked about previously? Did that come into the costs of reaching them? What about your Google Ads? What about your Yellow Pages? Have you thought about what it costs you for your bookkeeper to keep your books up to date, or your accountant? They're all costs. So you need to come up with, when you think about all those things, and it's important to write all those costs out, because your costs will be different to my costs, depending on where you're sourcing your clients compared to where I'm sourcing clients and how we source clients. So you need to have a dollar figure as to what you're going to consider per hour as the job cost for anything that you quote on. Not that you discuss that with your potential clients. That's something that you've got to keep in mind. Okay? So my friend Jeremy said in his area, he had a particular level that he needs to work on to be able to achieve a workable quote. But the thing is, If we don't have that in mind, then we may find that sometimes we underquote. We find that we're then dissatisfied with this job because the price was too low. So we need to have all those costs, those factors in place. Here's another thing to consider. It's tied up with the travelling. Are you in a location quoting close by where you have other clients, other regular clients? So the next door to one of your maybe retail premises, one of the shops you clean, has seen you clean windows and said, hey, come in and give us a quote. Well, if you're going to do that at the same time as your current client, then you can factor in, well, maybe I can make the quote a little lower to make it competitive to secure this job, because it'll make traveling to this location even more worthwhile. The other aspect is, have you received a call from someone? A friend of mine recommended you, but I'm 20 kilometers across town. You don't have any clients there. Is it going to be worth your while? What pricing are you going to factor into that job, because they insist they want you to clean the windows? So you need to think about that when you're considering quoting. So what I'd like to do is just go through a few different jobs that I do to give you a concept of the different styles of quoting that you're going to need to get experience with. And we're going to look through some of these photos here over the next few minutes and think about, and I'll talk to you about what the difference is with each of these ones. Then we'll be able to factor in and get an idea of, you need to not only think about those costs we've talked about, but your speed of work. You need to think about the work method that's going to be involved with doing a particular job. And I'll point that out in one of the commercial clients I did recently, 2-story office block. How are you going to work out a work method? Thinking about all those aspects will also impact on the quote that you provide for that business. So let's look at those now. So let's look at these commercial jobs that I talked about and analyze them, give you an idea of what to look for when you're quoting jobs. So this first one is a cafe I do every single week. Now, I was put in contact with them by one of my residential clients who went there to have lunch, noticed that the windows weren't as clean as it could have been. The cafe had just opened, so the owner called me and said, you've got to come and clean my glass because my client recommended you. So I may not have canvassed in that area, but it wasn't too far from home, and it turns out to be a really ideal job at the start of the day. So you notice here, you notice in the picture, it's got 8 main panels and a door. So I quoted from the aspect of internal out, external. Also factoring in that people are putting greasy fingers on the inside when they eat. They seem to do that for some reason. Who knows? But also the fact is that there's furniture to move. So all of those things that have to take place when you do the job can play a role in your decision making. Now this is a weekly job, so I'm thinking, okay, it's not as dirty each time. Can I bring the price down a little bit to make it competitive, to make it attractive to the cafe owner? So that's the first one. This second one is in the same suburb, and you notice it just looks like 2 large panels and 2 doors. Fairly simple. No, inside there's a boardroom, and so there's a panel of glass. You can't see that in the photo. A large piece of glass for the boardroom. So this emphasizes why with commercial clients you need to go to the premises to quote it. You can maybe use Google Maps and get a picture of it, but it doesn't really give you a concept of what's involved. You need to not only think about the glass you're cleaning, but for that big piece of glass in the boardroom that runs from the front windows back into the office, what is the surface of the floor that you're cleaning above? Thankfully, this one is polished concrete, so I don't have to stress too much about water dripping on carpet. But in some boardrooms, that's what you have to deal with. So you have to look at those factors and analyze what work method is involved with getting this job done. When they want the internal part and you're working behind that signage that you see there, advertising the different properties for sale, how are you going to get behind that? So you think about all those things when you're quoting. Now here's another real estate office that I do every 4 weeks. So it looks fairly straightforward. Front panel, side panels, okay, a bit of signage on the side to clean. But it's not, they too have a boardroom with quite complex windows, 3 or 4 panels, sliding doors. That makes it a lot more involved. So once again, you need to look at the job, what's involved. You've got to think too, what time may you need to get there if they're using the interview boardroom, meeting room that's at the front. Those kind of factors will play a role in your decision making. So there's 3 of them. Now here's a 4th one. This is, you might have seen this if you've looked at my Instagram page. This is a recent addition to my portfolio. This is an art gallery. I forget how they contacted me, I think through Google, found me on Google. They wanted a weekly service. So I was able to, they'd previously had a window cleaner, so I asked them what was the budget and what were you used to paying, and I looked at the job and said, mine's a little bit higher. It's a little bit out of my way, this job, but there's flexibility as to when I can do it. Tuesday afternoon, Wednesday afternoon, kind of like the last job of the day. They're fine with that. Now, just up the road from this particular job is a 4 weekly bike shop that I do. Now you'll notice in these 3 or 4 photos that I'll put up here, when you first walk around the corner, you'll notice that the panels aren't too high until you get around the front, and you'll notice not only are there quite extensively high panels, but with some of them near the entrance, there's a break. So you've got to then squeegee off 2 or 3 panels per drop. So you've got to think about all of those things. And the other factor that I didn't realize when quoting, which I found out once I was doing the job, is that the panels hadn't been installed correctly. So they've got on this shop, because of the sun, what's called Comfort Plus glass. Now Comfort Plus has a smooth surface at the front, the back is a little rougher, and that's for the internal part of the building. That's how it's supposed to be installed. But the dodgy installers have got some of them back to front. So you've got some panels that are very difficult to squeegee over. You can't just use the normal fanning method. So this is a job that I probably underpriced a touch, but I discovered that after doing the job the first time. But you work with that, and you just have to factor it in and realize that down the track you'll be able to raise the price up a little bit and not lose the client. But you can see there's a few complexities involved with that. You have to look at it, check the glass closely, see what's involved before you make the price. Now the same chain, bike shop, this next one, it's all ground. Very simple. Obviously pricing is less because it's all reachable without a pole. Still a fair bit of glass, but all reachable without a pole. So you can work quite quickly at getting that job done. Now, at this bike shop a few months ago, a neighbouring flower shop said, hey, can you do ours as well every 4 weeks since you're here? So because it was right next door, the price could be a little lower because I'm doing both of them at the same time. They're both accessible at the same time. So you can factor that into your pricing. If I was travelling across town for that flower shop, it would cost them more to accomplish the job. So they're all different things that you can think about as you're making these decisions. In the back of your mind, remember, what are my key operating costs? What are the things that play a role in my decision making here? My speed of work, the method involved, what's involved in getting this job done, how did I source this job? All those factors have to play a role in your decision making. Now the last job I want to show you, this also is a commercial job, But you notice now, as you see, it's a 2-story office. So you look at that and think, hey, Duncan, cinch, water-fed pole, wash all that down, wonderful, that'll look great, excellent. Except that it hadn't been cleaned for years. And so there was oxidization on the glass where the paint has run down a little bit, so that glass was discolored. You have to check all that out when you inspect the building. They also wanted the internals, so you need to ask them to let you walk through the offices and see accessibility to the internals. Sometimes people have got desks right up against the window, and so accessibility is difficult. So that's going to slow you up. All of those factors in making a decision. When you're doing a large commercial block like that, not only do you just look at the glass, you need to see, if I'm going to plug in my pure water system and I don't have an inbuilt system in my van, where's the water source? Is there one? Do I have to get water from across the car park in another building? So you need to look at all those things as you're doing the quote. Be very clear in your mind what is involved with getting this job done before you prepare a quote. So there's a few of those jobs that I mentioned. There's a number of others I could have used, but it gives you a sample, small to large. When you're starting out, we're not talking about high-rise. That's a whole different ballgame. I have no experience with high-rise rope access. That's for another YouTuber can discuss that with you. But I'm talking about for those of us who are working 1 to 2, 3 stories off the ground, a variety of different commercial properties, how are we going to be able to successfully quote on that? So let's review what we talked about today. 1, you need to understand that each place is different and each manager of that premises will want different things. They'll want maybe internal, external. Maybe they'll want internal once a month and external every week. Maybe it'll be a greater window of time between when you're there. Just come every 3 months, but still come every 3 months. So thinking about that factor. You need to know your operating costs. What's involved in completing this task? What are all the costs that you've already incurred to achieve that, to get to that, to finish that job? And lastly, go to the premises, meet the people who are making the decision, have a good look at it, think about it, then do your quote and send that off. So I hope that helps you with regard to your commercial quoting. You're going to make mistakes. Don't stress about that. It doesn't mean you've failed. It just means that you've learnt something that you can use and improve your skill level for the future. You see, we're all going to make mistakes. It's whether you get up and learn from it that makes the difference. So in our next video, I want to try and use the same principles at looking at a variety of residential properties and what things to look out for when quoting residentially in your business here in Australia. So thank you very much. If you enjoyed that and you haven't yet subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. It's just there. If you want to look at our social pages, there's the handle just across the bottom. And feel free to share it with your friends who are also looking at starting their business. Maybe it's not window cleaning. Maybe it's some other service or trade industry, but maybe the principles that you've benefited from will help them with their business startup. So look forward to catching up with you next time. Have a great day and we'll talk soon.